Growing up, addiction was the thread that ran through my family. Loud, relentless, and overpowering. It seems like every ounce of dysfunction, every moment of chaos, every storm that hit our home could be traced back to someone's addiction. And I'm not just talking about drugs or alcohol. I'm speaking more to gang violence, stealing, chasing money, chasing beauty, and even chasing validation through school. All of it. Every single addiction chipped away at the love, the unity, and the foundation a family is supposed to stand on. But I am still standing. So that means my story does not end with brokenness, it begins with resilience. There came a moment when I looked around my room and realized something had to change. I took a bold step into my future when I dared to apply to Illinois State University. That moment wasn't just about me. It was about family. It was about believing. It was about faith in it. It was about every kid back home that believed dreams like that did not come true for people like us. See, growing up, college wasn't the thing we talked about. It wasn't what we saw every day. Most of us didn't know what a college campus looked like or what a college diploma read. We only knew what was in front of us, and for most of us, that reflected struggle, hustle, and appreciating the best of what we had. I wanted them to see that college wasn't just for other people, it was for us too. And I did. Coming home to find the envelope that read, "Congratulations, you are accepted into Illinois State University," became a symbol of hope for when you believe in breaking generation cycles. Thank you. In that moment, we weren't just celebrating me becoming one of the first to be accepted into college. We were celebrating and honoring God's true power, his promises to prosper and not harm, to give us hope and in a future. And in the words of my grandmother, we were celebrating the beginning of building my legacy. In 2012, I made the courageous transition from Chicago to Bloomington Normal, Illinois, to officially live as a Redbird. I did not know that my life was about to change. The way I walked, the way I talked, the way I showed up, I knew I was becoming the leader I've always destined to be. But Chicago has a funny way of creeping in. Creeping into my dorm, into my thoughts, into the silent things I did not talk about at home, and into the question, do I really belong here? After reuniting with my fellow Redbirds on ISU's campus, I found that we were referred to as first-generation college students. At first, it felt like a badge of honor, a sign that we had broken through, a symbol of resilience. But that badge of honor quickly became a label that showed people who I was, where I come from, and at times what they believed I lacked. In the winter of that same year, I found myself facing a heavy decision that would change my life forever. After finding out I was pregnant, I began to question, should I abort the child that I just discovered I was carrying? Or do I choose to love my child unconditionally, despite the backlash, the judgment, or the doors that might close because of it? Suddenly, I was no longer just considered a first-generation college student. I was considered someone who would never reach college graduation. I paced my dorm room for hours, and I really do mean hours, thinking of the lies I would tell my family to shield myself from their disappointment. I hated the idea of bringing another child into this world into a dysfunction home, unstable income, and unstable foundation. I hated it. As I approached the room preparing for one of the most daunting moments of my life, I made a choice. I undressed and placed back on the clothes I had arrived in the hospital in, not just to walk away, but to walk forward in love because resilience was the answer. Resilience is what carried me through 9 months of uncertainty. It is what led me into my second semester of freshman year at ISU. And in that moment, I chose to lean into the one consistent source in my life. I chose God. Though resilience had been my answer, the force that carried me through 6 challenging months of my spring semester, I found myself once again facing a heavy decision. I had been academically dismissed from Illinois State University. I lost by just 2%. My GPA had fallen below the 2.0 GPA requirement, and I finished my freshman year with a 1.8 GPA. But to me, it was a win because only I knew the strength it took to finish. Only I knew the nights I pushed against exhaustion, fought against fear, and the silent sacrifices no transcript could ever reflect. But this time, I didn't choose to walk forward. I took what felt like the easy route, and I went back home. But going home didn't make things easier. It only brought more complications. I began to question, where will we live? When should I look for a job? Who will watch my baby? Should I learn to drive now or later? But the one question I never thought to ask myself was, am I prepared to say goodbye to my brother? I sat on the other end of what felt like a never-ending phone call, listening to my aunt's sniffles and cries, begging her not to tell me the worst, but in that moment, I knew my brother was no longer breathing the same air as me. I thought that if I could gather myself and get to the hospital, I had the power to bring him back to life. If he just felt my presence or heard my voice, he would get up. Instead, I found a corner in my room with the little strength I had left in my body, and I screamed. A scream that came from grief, but more so a plea to God to save me from the heartache that just shattered my heart into 1,000 tiny pieces. The blood still pumping through my veins, reminding me that I was still alive. I would have given up in a heartbeat just to bring my brother back. My brother was the one person who made home feel like home. He was one of the few male figures I truly looked up to. I loved him deeply, the kind of love rooted in safety and unconditional love. After giving birth, I never thought I would have to muscle up the strength to bury the one person who made me feel secure. My brother was murdered in the same neighborhood we grew up in, the same neighborhood I referenced earlier. The place I had once a dream of leaving behind took one person that I loved the most. And that's when I chose to roll less travel. I needed ISU, I needed purpose, but more importantly, I needed to know that God was still near. If I had stayed in Chicago, I would not be standing here today telling you my story. My grief was that deep, so deep that I was ready to leave this world behind just to be with my brother. That is the truth that I carried with me when I applied for reinstatement to ISU, laying it all out, every detail of my journey, the heartbreak, the loss, the battles, and the will to survive. I wasn't the same student who once had a 1.8 GPA. That version of me was gone. I returned with clarity, a child in my arms, and determination in my heart. I became known not for my setbacks, but for my comeback. I graduated from ISU, not just as a student, But as a mother, carrying my 3-year-old son across the stage with a 3.5 GPA, that's God, with a 3.5 GPA and a legacy of resilience. But the silent truth of this journey, the part I don't say enough, is how deeply I appreciate the love and sacrifices I witnessed from the women in my life. Women who gave effortlessly, quietly, consistently, who made sure we never went without, even if they did. For the longest, I believed my childhood was hard simply because I didn't come from a traditional household with a mother and a father. But I see it differently now. I was raised in a phenomenal family, one that never let my head hang low, never let my stomach go empty, and carried the weight of silent cries just to keep a roof over our heads. We didn't always see that kind of love for what it was back then, but it was the foundation that shaped me. That same foundation turned me into the mother I am, the woman I am, and a 2-time college graduate. And in 2023, I became the first in my family to earn a master's degree. That wasn't just my win. That was the legacy of both of my grandmothers. That was the legacy of both of my grandmothers shining through me, through every milestone, every moment I chose to rise instead of fall. I mastered more than just a degree. I mastered resilience. When I stepped out on faith, it required courage, discipline, and deep trust that God would not only provide the destination, but the tools and the clarity for my journey. I wasn't just asking for the what, but for the how. The vision to see it, the creativity to shape it, the wisdom to navigate it, and the execution to bring it to life. It is not passive. It is an active, ongoing partnership with God. Faith without works is dead, but works without faith often lead to burnout. When I trust Him with the process, even my uncertainties become part of my testimony. Thank you, God, for this platform. Thank you, God, for Illinois State University, and go Redbirds.